Do you remember that day when we were so young? Boom, 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 my heart was so dumb. Looking at the hearts it broke one by one. So, soon, no, I'm not
One night before the tavern keeper shut his door, a wobbly gentleman came in, his footing was unsure. Mustachioed and handsome, and his clothing touched the floor. He was no man at all, he was 3 kobolds in a trench coat. One's on the bottom, strong as he, 2's in the middle, carrying 3. 3's pretending not to be, 3 kobolds in a trench coat. One day when the maiden was out on her nightly stroll, she got lost in the forest and was set on by an owl. When in there stepped a gentleman, mustachioed and tall. He was no help at all, 'cause he's 3 kobolds in a trench coat. One's on the bottom, strong as he, 2's in the middle, carrying 3. 3's pretending not to be, 3 kobolds in a trench coat. Once there was a king who was a scourge upon his land. The citizens all wished him dead, his rule they couldn't stand. One day he just fell dead on the pavement by no hand. He happened to have died next to 3 kobolds in a trench coat. One's on the bottom, strong as he, 2's in the middle, carrying 3. 3's pretending not to be, 3 kobolds in a trench coat. Of the kingdom, the man's praises they did sing, believing that he was the one who slew their awful king. Put on his head a crown, into the throne they did him bring, but little did they know he was 3 kobolds in in a trench coat. One's on the bottom, strong is he. Two's in the middle, carrying three. Three's pretending not to be. Three kobolds in a trench coat. It didn't take them long to hate their brand new overlord. He butchered up the tax code and put rebels to the sword. From out of his own kingdom he was driven by the horde. Economy had been ruined by three kobolds in a trench coat. One's on the bottom, strong is he. Two's in the middle, carrying three. Three's pretending not to be. Three kobolds in a trench coat. 1, 2, 3. Three kobolds in a trench coat. And if you're wondering how I sing three-part harmony, when I am just one man without another to be seen, I'm sure the most observant of you already have gleaned that I am not a man, I am three kobolds in a trench coat. One's on the bottom, fiddling free. Two's in the middle, keeping the beat. I'm pretending not to be. Three kobolds in a trench coat. We're pretending not to be. Three kobolds in a trench coat.
One second. There's no audio. Yeah. It's going great. OBS is amazing, people. Love it.
Well, you'll let us know when the sound's working, I guess.
Okay. You can talk.
Can you hear me now?
But
Good.
it doesn't do any good.
I know.
Can they hear us? Huh? Hello. Hi everybody. This
Hey,
is Rue. Hi.
Again.
Yes, again. I'm doing an introduction again. If you've clicked on this lovely video, you're joining us for our live show. Woo! And here today we are joined with good old Sammy. Hi Sammy, say hello everybody.
Oh,
Or-
hi.
or- You're everybody today, by the way.
Yay,
Just not
I'm everyone.
You're just not one person. You're representing everybody. So I
Oh,
appreciate you.
That's
You're
terrible.
nailing
then-
this intro.
And then we have Click. Hello, Click. You sound super, super energetic. 100%.
Yay.
All right. And then we have Voss, who's like manning all the knobs and stuff like that and actually keeping this thing running.
Somewhat.
Barely.
Somewhat.
And then we have Nuka. Hello, Nuka.
Howdy.
So, what have you all been up to today?
Putting out fires.
Just today?
Yeah,
just today?
or what have you been up to?
Who should start, Rue?
Click. Please tell us what you've been up to.
What have I been up to? Shoveling snow.
Yeah, we
Shoveling
got
snow?
this morning.
I know. I got snow too. I was like, we haven't had snow like pretty much almost all season. Nothing that's
Thank
kind
you,
of stuck.
Polar Vortex.
So how was that? Shoveling?
Cold and wet.
Sammy, what have you been up to?
So much. Well, let's see. What was the last one we did? Did we have Thanksgiving already or not? I don't remember.
I think so.
Cuz other than that, it's just been dealing with holiday stuff and family stuff and being tired and lots of things going on. So many people. But no, it's been all right. But yeah, got through the holidays, got through New Year's. Welcome to 2025, folks.
Woo!
But yeah, I mean nothing real crazy, just been getting through the holidays, still playing Final Fantasy 14. I may have spent far too many hours playing Supermarket Simulator last night. So was up far too late playing that. So other than that, not a whole ton. Getting ready to go on a trip at the end of the month. We're gonna be doing a Disney cruise on the last 2 weeks of January. It's gonna be me and my partner and a couple of our friends, and never done a Disney cruise, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, that'll be exciting. That's super cool. Like
Yeah.
being able to go out. You're gonna go to Disney World. You showed me some of those videos of the Wish, the cruise, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yes, so we're gonna be on the new ship, the Treasure. But then yeah, we're like, well, we're going to Florida to get the cruise ship. Why don't we just spend a couple days in the parks before we go? So yeah, we're doing like 4 days in the parks,
Dang.
and then we're doing a 7-night cruise? Yeah, I think it's a 7-night cruise.
You're gonna be all Disneyed out by the end of it.
Yeah, that's typically how it goes. And then it's like, and then a couple years later we do something else. But yeah, that's kind of what we've been up to.
Nuka,
What-
what have you been up?
Oh.
What have you been up to, Mr. Nuka?
Oh gosh, I guess since last time I had all my final exams for my courses. I graded and marked all those. Enjoyed some delightful time off where I caught up on some gaming. I played and finished Lies of P, which was an absolute delight as a Dark Souls fan, which made me nostalgic for Dark Souls. So I played and beat Dark Souls. What else did I do? What was the other game I played? Colony Ship, which is like a role-playing sort of game in like the classic Fallout sort of style. Played and just delighted in that. And now I'm playing some more Satisfactory with some friends of mine. Other than that, prepping lots and lots and lots and lots of recording lectures for my upcoming course. I've decided this year that I want to try to do all my recordings as soon as possible so that I don't have to do as much recording during the semester and hopefully preserve my voice. So I've been recording for like 5 or 6 hours a day for the last 7, 8, 9 days, something like that.
Dang.
And then on top of all of that, as if I weren't busy enough, I'm getting ready for data collection at Further Confusion in like 10 days or 11 days or something like that. So to any folks who are going to be at Further Confusion, don't be surprised to see me running around throwing cards with QR codes at them at people in whatever lines I can find accumulated. Further Confusion has this bad habit, quote unquote bad habit, of not having lines for their registrations. So it's that's usually where we get people with surveys, but I usually have to find lines, usually for the dealer's den, to pass out surveys in.
So,
But yeah.
so the surveys are going to be for the 2025 data?
Yeah, so the way we sort of do things now is we have 2 big blocks of surveys every year. We have the winter survey and we have the summer survey. The winter survey has expanded now to include any data we collect at Further Confusion, Furry Fiesta, Vernal Equinox, and online on our research website. And then the summer one is data collected at Anthrocon. This year it'll also include Eurofurence and possibly Fur A up here in Canada, and then whatever we collect online as well. hopefully with some VR chat mixed into all of that. So yeah, data aplenty.
So much data.
That's amazing. Lots of data. Woo. Anything else that you've been up to?
Nope, that's mostly it. So what have you been on? Did you say what you were up to already, Rue?
I I've been up to a lot of stuff within the holidays. I family stuff after family stuff after family stuff. It gets to a certain point where it's like I love you, family. I love you, but like I'm back to wanting to get back to my regular life. So I've seen lots of family, and I love holidays. I really do. And I know I'm coming off as like a little, bah humbug, but seriously, I really enjoy the holidays, but I'm also okay with it being done. I also had, like I explained last time, I had a lot of funerals that I had to attend. And so I've seen family, like there was basically, we at a family reunion, we basically said, well, we'll see you next week, or that's basically some of the things that were happening. It got that insane. But overall, I had a good Christmas. I had a good New Year's. I spent it with some friends. It was very enjoyable. And I, of course, I know you guys make fun of me with this all the time, but I've gotten into VR even more. And so I'm here in my VR avatar, which, usually I do VC face, but this is kind of a test to see how this goes. So in all my fuzziness glory. So anywho,
We can see up your nose.
yes, is there something in there?
Probably
you
cookie crumbs.
You got some crumbs up in there, my dude. You been sniffing them cookies again?
Yeah, I have. In fact, I do have a fortune, but I think that we need to ask Voss what he's been up to.
No thanks.
Okay. Well, cookies. Well, today our fortune is, it says, you laugh now, but wait until you get home, in bed with a cookie.
That feels kind of ominous.
I feel like that's a small wiener joke somewhere in there, but I
was gonna
can't.
say,
Yeah.
you think it's funny now? Wait till you see it. Huh?
Oh no. Well, anywho, do we have any peeps in the chat? Any people typing away? Type.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got lots, but you can't see them.
I mean,
I definitely saw
can.
someone else had shouted out Liza P. Sage. Absolutely, Liza P. was delightful. Other than that, yeah, just people in chat.
Yeah.
Peeps being peeps.
Peeps being in peeps. Speaking of which, if you would like to be part of the chat that you're seeing that's coming up here, you can chat into YouTube itself, or you could choose to, if you're a patron of the show, you can head over to our patron Discord and chat in there, and anything that you see will pop up on the screen itself. And of course, from time to time, we'll jump in and look to see what's in the chat. But as far as today's episode, we have a very, very, very special episode, and it's the episode that I look forward to each year. We have good old Dr. Nuka. You're not old, you're very young and very spry. But needless to say, we have Dr. Nuka here today to talk to us about the data that he has collected about furries over
Today,
this last year.
On a very special episode of For What It's Worth, we have a very special guest to the show.
It's your alter ego.
How is it? You're a guest and a host at the same time.
I know, I'm doing double duty. It is a little weird. It takes me back to my roots of like when I first I would come onto the show occasionally just as like the the data guy who would be brought in, and it's kind of nice to sort of be back to that. But,
So maybe we need to like switch it up a little bit. But you have all the data, so
Yeah.
I mean, let's rewind time a little bit, and we'll put you in that guest role and be like, and just basically say, Nuka, what data do you have for us? What stuff do you have to share with us today?
so I guess I'll explain what I have
Get
planned
hyped.
here. Yeah. So there's a couple ways I was thinking about doing this. One was like I was going to just do an entire presentation. Basically, I was going to preview my presentation, the one I'm giving at Further Confusion in a couple of weeks. But then I realized that wouldn't be great. That would just be like listening to me talk for 90 minutes, which is not quite the point of a podcast live stream like this. Like I could have just pre-recorded that and uploaded that to the website. So instead, I figure what I would do is I would grab all the new stuff we learned from last year and just sort of compile it into sort of a list of fun facts that we can sort of go over and chat about. So for those who don't know, like I mentioned, we do 2 big studies every year, and we collect a lot of data. And so this is sort of a summary of the most interesting stuff. This is by no means the only stuff we've learned. We have, it was about 200 questions on each of the 2 surveys that we ran last year. So there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions. This is mostly going to be sort of a selection of the most interesting stuff, or the stuff that furries are the most interested in. There was a lot of other more boring stuff that like the psychologists are kind of interested in, but like furries may not be as interested in. But yeah, so I thought I would just sort of get a smattering of that and just sort of throw stuff out to the room and just see, what do you guys think about that? Interesting, not interesting? And we can sort of play it by ear. What do you think of that?
Okay.
Sounds like a
good.
plan. Woo!
You say, I hope you like it, because that's what we're doing. So
Oh,
Whether or
man,
not you like it, that's what we're fucking doing.
I wanted option D, whatever
if you
that
don't-
was.
If you don't like that, then there's always next episode, which
I thought you wanted option C for cookie.
I mean,
Huh.
or
huh?
option B for biscuits, or option. Anyway,
Well, I was thinking D for dick, but okay. Go ahead.
okay, so yes, there's. I realized in retrospect, there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to this. I was sort of going through facts and pulling them onto this document, and I realize now that a smarter, more prepared person would have organized them. So they're coming in absolutely no order. This is just random smattering of facts. I should also point out, just for context for the nerds, the data that you're listening to here came from the 2 surveys we did. Just to give you some basic statistics on it, or some basic methodology on this. The winter survey was a combination of Further Confusion, Nordic FuzzCon, so we went to Sweden last year and did a study there, and Texas Furry Fiesta. So this is a combination of all of that data plus some online data. We ended up with a sample of more than 1,400 participants from all those different samples. So this is over 1,000 furries from different countries and such. The methodology was mixed, so some of them did physical papers at Furry Fiesta. A lot of them did it online. What was really novel about this study, though, was that at Nordic FuzzCon in particular, we were excited to work with them because we did what's called a longitudinal study, which allows us to track the same people over a period of time. So this is one of the first times we've been able to do a complete study like this, where we had the folks at Nordic FuzzCon email a survey to folks about 4 or 5 weeks before the convention for them to do. And then we had them do a survey at the convention. And then a few weeks after the convention, we also had those same people do a survey. And we were able to link their responses up between the 3 waves. And so what we have is data from before, at, and after the convention, which allowed us to do some really neat, novel sorts of analyses that allow us to track things like changes over time. And I'll talk to you about some of the cool data we were able to get from that. But that was sort of the winter study. And then the summer study was a mixture of Ferality and Anthrocon and Foray, a convention up here in Canada. And that one had a combined sample of 1,215 participants. So again, a good mixture of folks from all modalities. people often say, oh, if you go to just one convention and get a bunch of people, you're not getting a very representative sample. So this is our attempt to try to broaden our methods and make our results a little more generalizable. So that's the nerdy methodology stuff out of the way, and I'm definitely more able to sort of explain more of the finer points as we go along if the chat brings up stuff. And to the crew and the cast, feel free to if folks ask a good question, feel free to stop me. I'm just kind of in data mode and just looking over all my different sheets of paper here, so get my attention if a good question comes up.
So what we have is Nuka in his natural environment.
Yeah, I got two monitors, and they're all, I'm not even exaggerating, I wish I could take a picture. They're all just sort of covered in various sheets and spreadsheets and things right now. So I can't see the chat, so if people are asking questions, just stop me and get my attention.
Okay.
So, okay, so I guess the first nifty new piece of data we have is not entirely new, but it's kind of nice to have some additional context on this. People who've been following our research for a bunch of years have known that we're getting more and more sophisticated in the way we ask about gender each year. So for full context, way back in the day, like the 2009, 2010, 2011, we were back at the like male, female, check the box kind of days. And we've come a long way since then, as you might imagine. So each year we try to add more to that analysis and to be more sophisticated. One of the novelties this year, which I'm actually frankly surprised it took us this long, we've added non-binary now as an option. So non-binary is in there. And what's really neat about this is that for a number of years, we've had a really big, like we have all these different options for gender, and then we have other. And other is typically a pretty decent sized category. It's like, 12, 13, 14%. What's really cool is this year, once we added non-binary, that other category has dropped considerably to about 4.3%, which means there was a lot of people who we were missing before by not having non-binary as an option. And I'll point out right now, 11.6% of our sample identified as non-binary, which is a lot more than we expected, and kind of a pretty significant, a pretty glaring omission on our part. Again, it wasn't intentional. It's just sort of, we have blind spots until people point them out to us, and we go, oh shit. So this was one of those ones. Someone said, hey, you haven't asked about non-binary. I'm like, that's a really good point. We haven't. I don't know why we haven't. And so now that's going to be on the survey and all our future surveys. But yeah, 11.6%. So it's kind of nice to be able to take a big chunk out of that other category, because it means we're having labels that identify more and more people, which is nice. And then for other context, cis men were 61.6%, cis women were 6%, trans women 3.9%, trans men 4.6%, genderqueer 1.6%. Non-conforming 1.2%, agender 1.8%, gender fluid 3.3%. So yeah, a big smattering, but that was exciting to be able to see fruit born out of this wonderful suggestion that we include non-binary people. Of course, it's one of those things where in hindsight it seems really obvious, but beforehand we went a bunch of years and no one had pointed it out to us, and so we kind of, I guess, forgot. But yeah, if anyone has any thoughts or comments, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I was gonna
Oh,
say
Barnaby
it's,
has go ahead.
I was gonna say it's when you're running data like that all the time, or you're looking for specific things, I think also part of it too is like you guys are looking for like the more like furry-esque kind of things, and so sometimes that's not always something that is in the forefront. So I think that's something it's something we're getting more and more not knowledge, I don't want to say knowledge, understanding of kind of where people sit in the gender spectrum. So it's
well, and also there's no standardized measure of this. Like one of the tricky parts about doing this research is it'd be nice if everyone kind of agreed this is the way you measure gender. This is the way that everyone can agree is how we measure gender. That doesn't exist. So you're constantly kind of bodging something together. And there's always gaps, there's always holes. No matter how you do it, you're going to end up missing something. And there's not to make excuses for us, by the way.
Yeah, well, and you can get really into the nitty gritty weeds of it, and then or it's more generalized, and there's kind of a hard balance. So I think the fact that it's there now is awesome. Maybe it took a little bit to get there, but that's, we're there moving forward.
I do see Hanaconda. I like that name. Hanaconda asks, how do you deal with things that are nested like that, with NB being an umbrella? So the way we do it is that when we ask the question, we do it as kind of a check the boxes that apply to you. So we don't like to impose any sort of like rule that says, oh, if you check this, then you're also intended to fall into this category. We don't like to impose organizations like that, because anytime you try to come into something as broad as gender and try to say, well, here's the rules for how gender is organized, inevitably you will step on toes. You'll get things wrong. I am not the czar of gender who gets to decide how these things are oriented. So we just kind of say, if this label, if you think it applies to you, check the box. If it doesn't, then don't check the box. And so we just kind of let the chips fall where they may. We're not gender specialists, so certainly if I was trying to do a more concentrated study on this subject, we'd probably have more and more measures of this. This is more just to kind of get a broad demographic look. So we recognize there's messiness inherent in this when we measure it, and we sort of take that as the nature of the beast when measuring it. So I guess if there's any other thoughts on that before I go to the next one?
I think we could get to move on.
All right.
Sounds
Another
good.
really cool suggestion that we had gotten from someone, and this is one of those things again where after doing this for a number of years, I was kind of shocked that we hadn't thought about it sooner. So we've asked about sexual orientation for over a decade, and again, with every year we get better and better at how we ask about it. For example, a few years ago we started asking about asexuality. Ace erasure is definitely a thing, so it's good that someone pointed this out. And it's nice to see that asexuality, 16.3% of furries asexual. This is a glaring omission our parts in the past that has now hopefully been rectified with this. But what was really neat was someone said, hey, you ask about sexuality, but you don't ask about romantic attraction. These two things aren't necessarily one and the same. You can be romantically attracted to one group of people, but sexually attracted to another. And so for the first time, we also included not just like, oh, are you heterosexual, but also heteroromantic? Are you bisexual, biromantic? And we have each of those assessed separately, so people can sort of indicate where they fall. And what we find is that largely they line up, but they're not perfectly in alignment, which means there are differences. So it's not the case that every single person who said that they are heterosexual would call themselves heteroromantic. There's a few percentage points of difference for all of these categories. Which is again nice to see that there's some truth to this idea that these are two related but distinct concepts. Perhaps I'm always a little bit hesitant to point this out. Perhaps lending fuel to the fire that is the debate about are straight people in the minority in the fandom. I don't like to think about it that way necessarily, but what I can say is that 12.6% of people in the sample said that they were straight. Which is not the largest demographic. It is also worth noting no single demographic emerged as being above 50%. So it doesn't make sense to say the fandom is predominantly X, because there's no single demographic that is. The largest plurality is people who identify as bisexual at 31%, pansexual 25.3%, gay 28.7%, lesbian 3.3%. Asexuality I mentioned 16.3, demisexual 14.4. So yeah, it's a big old mix of things.
Nuka, can you give us those stats one more time?
Oh sure, yeah, I'll run through it again. So just to go from the top here, lesbian 3.3%, sexual attraction and romantic percentage is 4. For gay sexual it's 28.7%, romantic is 30.6%. Straight, 12.6% for sexual attraction, 15% for romantic attraction. Bisexual, 30.9% for sexual attraction, 28% for romantic attraction. Pansexual, 25.3% for sexual attraction, 26.8% romantic attraction. Asexual, 16.3% sexual, and then aromantic, 10.3%. demisexual 14.4%, demi-romantic 14.5%, and then other is 4.1% for sexual and 4.2% for romantic. So big old bunch of data, big old bunch of statistics there. Yeah, but again, like sorry, go
I
ahead.
think it's interesting. I definitely think it's interesting, the percentages and how it breaks down. I'm glad that they asked that question for you, because that definitely gives a little bit more, more statistics as far as the breakdown of, people that are, what are they, like, what's their sexual relation? I mean, like, what they are, but also like their if they're romantic or if they're not, so that's cool.
Well, I think there's a growing number of people who will say things like, "Oh, well, my sexual behavior is perhaps a little bit different than my romantic attraction," right? I think that distinction is starting to become something people are more aware of, and have the terminology to be able to express. So it's nice
and
to
that
have
they're
the
not-
language.
Yeah, that they're not one and the same for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm one of those romantic people. I have to have a little bit of romance. Anyways, it's not about me.
Yeah.
Continue.
A bouquet of cookies for the fox.
Yes.
So
The fact that those weren't numbers, it wasn't ordered by numbers, is going to drive me crazy, Nuka.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's ordered in the orientation of the, or the order was the order that they were asked in the survey, not necessarily from biggest to smallest proportion.
It's going to drive me crazy.
Firecrest Fanatics asks, is there a set of stats for the prior year, and do they differ much? Yes. The problem is, A, I don't have them with me right now, but also B, because the nature of the sample is slightly different. Like, so in this particular case, the sample included those from Sweden. So because there are some slight country level differences in where the participants come from, it's kind of hard to make meaningful one-to-one comparisons. Ditto for the gender data. It's really hard to compare one-to-one because this year we had non-binary as an option, which we didn't have last year. So the numbers are going to look different just because non-binary folks tried to slot themselves in somewhere else, whereas this year it was they had another option available to them. So I'm always a little bit hesitant to go year by year and make comparisons and say, oh, gay people are up 3.2% over last year, like it was a stock price or something. It's a little bit. I'm always now, over a long enough time scale, over the course of 10 years, if we look at a broad sweeping range across like 30 studies, do we see trends? I'm a little more comfortable with that. But year over year, I'm always a tad bit hesitant to do that.
Yes, the gay stock market.
The gay stock market is up.
Are you buying or selling?
I'm buying.
I feel
all
like it's
of it.
illegal. I think that question is illegal,
I'm listed as a commodity.
except in Nevada.
I'll buy your stock 100%. Click. I'm a 100% investor.
All right, chat. Whose stock are you buying? Label it now.
Oh no.
Ooh! Everybody, just say Nuka, please. Just type Nuka right now.
Let's see here. So continuing on, what else we got? So I think we're leaving demographics a little bit for now here. Again, we asked about all these demographics, but a lot of the things we asked, like, it was very similar to trends we've observed in previous years. So I'm mostly trying to look for the novel stuff this year. One of the neat things, okay, this was a neat thing to find. We've observed in previous years that 2019-2020 was a pretty sizable year for furries getting into the fandom. So we had noticed that there was a bit of a spike in terms of number of furries getting into the fandom during that time. We sort of credit it in parts to the pandemic, right? So you had a lot of people with a lot of spare time on their hands. VR chat was becoming sort of a thing. So there was kind of a spike in furries who kind of got into the fandom in 2020, 2021. One thing we noticed is that in the last couple of years, 2022 and 2023, the number has actually gone up, even relative to that. So there have also been a number of furries. Like, it's sort of growing, the number of new furries getting into the fandom, which is sort of consistent with things we're noticing at furry conventions, where year over year conventions are growing by leaps and bounds. I can't remember, Anthrocon this year I think grew by like 20% or something like that.
Oh my gosh, they have grown to become so big. And it's not a problem. It's just they're so big now.
Mhm.
It's kind of scary sometimes on how big they are.
And I'm always hesitant to make predictions about the future because, I mean, nothing makes you look more foolish than making some broad sweeping conclusive prediction only to be proven wrong horrifically. But I would not be surprised if in the next, decade or two, we see our first furry convention that pushes like the 50,000 range, right? Like starting to get into Comic-Con numbers, because I think what happens is you end up hitting this like critical mass where furry kind of tips over into mainstream, and suddenly there's a deluge or a flood of people who get into it, right? Comic books weren't a big deal until they were, and then once they hit sort of a tipping point in culture, suddenly there's a rush of people into it, right? So I would not be surprised. I don't want to make that bold prediction, but it wouldn't surprise me if we had a 50,000 person convention sometime before the year 2040.
Nuka, I know that you're not a con chair, but how? How would they be able to house that many people?
I mean, conventions like Comic-Con do it, right? I mean, there's a Comic-Con that's over 100,000 people, right? I think San Diego Comic-Con is over 100,000 people, unless I'm
Mhm.
mistaking it for a different one. So, nature finds a way.
Yeah, nerds find a way.
But that gets into interesting debatable points about things like how does the nature of the fandom change? Like if you look at something like a San Diego Comic-Con or one of these really big conventions, there's things like, oh, you wait in line for 3 hours for an event to happen, right? Or you have a dealer, like maybe you end up having multiple dealers den. One is like the big commercial corporate dealers den, and a separate one is the the smaller cottage industry dealers den. But there's a lot of changes that come with a growing convention. You might end up dividing up convention spaces across multiple centers, right? So if you went to like an Anthrocon and it was spread out over multiple hotels or multiple convention centers, you might have to make difficult decisions about like, oh well, which one do I go to? Do I go to this convention center on this day, but then I risk missing events at the other one? So it logistically it becomes a little trickier, and the feel of the convention is very different from, say, the conventions of yesteryear, where it was 1,000 people in a hotel and everything was kind of on 2 minutes away from each other.
All I can say, I do want to add in, if there is that many furries, in one space, I hope, I really, really hope all of them shower. Like, it can be anything. Like, I mean, any convention. I hope that any of them shower, but that's a lot of people all in one place. Anyways, keep
Mhm.
going. Sorry.
What was also neat to see was the sort of distribution of how many years people have been a furry for, because it's a big old mix of people basically. Um, there's there's this constant surge of new younger furries coming into the fandom. About a quarter of the furries in our study have been around in the fandom for less than 4 years, or for 5 or fewer years. And that's not including furries who are minors who can't be in our study. So take that. That's probably a significant underestimation. But there's sort of this constant influx of younger furries into the fandom. But we also see that there's furries. 20% of furries have been here for 5 to 7 years. Another 20% have been here for 8 to 10 years. Almost 20% have been here for 11 to 15 years. And almost 20%. So it's again almost perfectly split up between 16 years and above. So the fandom has a really nice balance of new blood coming in, but also the old guard kind of sticking around in the fandom. So yeah, it's a really interesting mix of folks who've been here for decades and folks who are just getting their feet wet. So that was kind of neat to see, because we often just look at it in terms of age and say, well, the fandom's very young. But so we always kind of say, well, 18-year-old furries seem to make up a lot of furries. But when you look at it by how many years you've been around, that 18-year-old furry may have been a furry for 4 or 5 years already, right? And conversely, I've met 60-year-old furries who just got into the fandom last year.
Yeah.
So
Well, like I'll be 18 years in the fandom Well, this year I'm 18 years in the fandom, so
Yeah,
being around for
for,
a minute.
yeah, for me it's about 17 or 18 years for me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got here. Okay, so we always have kind of just one of our questions that we always ask is just like categories. Which of these categories describes you? And we have just a bunch of them, right? Bronies and gamers and artists, musicians, writers, gray muzzles, etc., etc. So we always add a few new ones every year. One of the new couple of categories we added this year were casual fur and lifestyler, because we haven't asked that before, which again is one of those things that's a little surprising to me that we never asked that before. We asked, are you a casual fur? Do you consider yourself to be a lifestyler? So I'll let everyone guess real quick. What percentage of furries do you think called themselves casual furs? And what percent do you think called themselves lifestylers? Let's start with casual fur. What percentage of furs called themselves a casual fur?
I'm gonna
Considering you're
say
asking mostly at conventions, I would say it's pretty low. I'd say a lot of them say
It's a
they're
mixture of
lifestylers.
convention and online as well. It's a mixture
Right.
of both. Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna say that it's actually probably around 35%. That's gonna be my guess.
So 35.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna say
the
about
guesses?
30.
Yeah, 25,
What's the
30
guesses in the
ish.
chat? Let's see who's closest here.
Yeah.
So what? So Firecrest asked, "What's the definition?" We actually didn't give a definition, and the reason for that is because if we tried to impose a definition, if we said that's what a casual fur is, someone would say, "No, that's not how I would define it." So, however you would interpret the term
Yeah.
casual fur, yeah, would that apply to you?
Because I know how I answered.
Well, how would you answer? What would you define it as, Sammy?
If I remember, I did lifestyle. So
So we
I
have.
did that as well.
lifestyler.
So I think Bruce said
Actually,
35% casual.
I think casual is probably lower. I'm saying like 15%.
So yeah, 15%.
I think more people
35%.
consider themselves a lifestyle because that's like I'm not as hardcore as I used to be. I used to be, wear a tail everywhere and always had a collar on. But I still consider myself more lifestyle-ish because all my friends are furries. Like
Right.
so much of my life is involved in it.
Yeah.
So I think casual is pretty low.
Yeah.
See,
Because it's
and
like even
that's-
if you're not doing furry stuff every day, like doing furry things every day, everyone you're interacting with is furry,
Yeah.
other than maybe your coworkers.
Okay,
Most things you do are based around furries in some way. So it's like it's a large part of my lifestyle in general.
so here's the reason why that I think it's higher. And I know Nuka's going to give us the actual facts, but before he
Yeah.
reveals it, the reason why that I think it's higher is because I think that lifestylers are more furries that are older. That I think that they probably would select that they are more lifestylers because they've been in the fandom for longer. But somebody that is young, which there's a high percentage of younger individuals, I think that they would be more hobbyists because maybe they're not 100% sure. Maybe they're testing the water. So it'll be interesting to see the what it actually is.
All right. And last chance to get your guesses in before I give the number. All right. So the number of casual furs, 42.7%.
Damn.
And by extension, the number of furries who call themselves lifestylers, 12.3%.
Huh.
So
See,
furries are like three and a half times more likely to call themselves casual furs than lifestylers.
So what are the other 40-something%?
So somewhere in between, I suppose, or they could have just said, I don't know what that term means, so I'm not going to pick it. So
Well, right, but it's a two-part question, and you got
no,
40-something and 15%. That
Was
doesn't
it
make
wasn't-
100, Luca.
but it wasn't a two-part question. It was, here's a bunch of labels. Which of them describe you?
Oh,
Pick from the lists. So
mm,
we've also found that 29.4% of furs are VR chat users. I like to rub my face in this one every single time because for a number of years, I think in 2020 and 2021, furries had said, you got to get on this VR chat thing. And I'm like, I I'd never heard of this VR chat thing. I'm an old fart. I don't know what this is all about. It can't be that popular. And then the first time I did, it was like up around 1/3 of furries. I'm like, well, shit, that's a gigantic blind spot that I completely had. So I have to remind myself with every survey to be humble and to realize that I have so many blind spots.
I'm
Gotta go where the furries are.
it's great to know like yeah, the fandom is ever changing. That's why I love I mean that's why we do this show, is because it's always changing. And so, VR used to not be a big huge thing, and now it kind of has became a little bit bigger. But before we get into the other statistics, Nuka, I have to ask,
Mhm.
and if you don't have a easy way to pull this up, but going back to the lifestyler stuff,
Yep.
I want to know, and if there's a way for you to pull this real quick, let me know. Um,
Is it older
what's
first
the
for lifestylers?
age? Yeah. Is it
I'm
older first?
I'm kicking myself for having not done that analysis. It's actually, I got a giant list of analyses I have to run. That one is top of the list, so I don't have it now. It's going to be on the analyses I run, but I share your
Thank you.
hypothesis there. I think it is older furs are going to be more likely to call themselves lifestylers,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Okay. Thank you.
So, going back to VR,
Yep.
I have learned recently that Second Life is still very heavily used by furries.
Is this still around? I didn't even know
Oh,
Second Life
yeah.
was still around. Oh
There's
shit.
people still very active on Second Life to
Oh gee, I really should ask
these
add
days.
Second Life to this too, because I remember we used to ask about Second Life, and then I just assumed
Yeah.
that it kind of fell off the planet because I never heard about it anymore. We should put it back on here.
Yeah, I would just to
Mhm.
see, because there are people still very regularly, and there's apparently a pretty active Second Life furry community.
Is there an overlap between Second Life and VR chats, or are they like you're on
I don't
one or
know.
the other, but not both?
I don't know. That's something you'd have to find out.
It's an empirical question, I guess I'd have to ask. Yeah.
Yeah,
I wonder if
gotta add that.
that one club that I used to go and dance on that pole is still there.
Probably.
Let's see some other statistics, just rapid fire, real quick. Some other interesting statistics from this labels category. 7.9% of furries call themselves Therians. 10.1% bronies. So my brony fans are still going out there strong. 10.1% of us. Bro hoof to y'all. Military furs, 3.5%. I always love this one, Popufur. 3.5% of furs call themselves Popufurs. So
I hope you answered that one correctly, Rue.
You need to add a question into that is, do you know somebody who's a popufur?
oh, I like that.
Because that would be like 90% or more.
Yeah.
Because it's always like, it takes a certain kind of person to be like, yeah, I'm a popufur, but everybody around him is like, yes, you are.
I'm
Uh,
I'm not a popufur.
Come on, Rue.
I'm not. I'm not popular.
36% of furs call themselves artists. 65% of sorry, go ahead.
Low. That's low.
65% of furs gamers. Let's see here. 17% writers, 14.6% musicians, 8.9% gray muzzles, 31% anime fans, 37% science fiction fans. Yeah. Oh, and sorry, I pulled this statistic for the group here. 10.3% cub fur or baby fur.
Wait, what was that last statistic? I wanted to hear that one.
10.
I mean, I wanted to hear all of them, but
10.3% cub fur or baby fur.
you should separate those.
Okay.
Because I would love to see like the rundown of how many cub furs that there are or kid furs versus how many baby furs that there are. At least that's a statistic that I want to know.
That's what the section need is more labels. We don't have enough separate categories. We
More.
need more.
More variety.
Yeah.
Your survey's not long enough, Nuka. Make it longer.
I have to chuckle because when we first started this section, it was like 5 labels, and it just continues to grow, and now it's like 30, and we just keep adding to other subgroups and other chunks within the fandom.
So what you're saying is Rue should sponsor a cub fur survey.
Sure. I thought there was someone who was doing one at
You
one point, but
you take cookies, right, as payment.
I mean, they're already getting paid. You just have to, like, do the work.
Mm.
Let's see what else we got here. Oh, right. So a new set of questions that we asked about this year. This is based on some open-ended data from a previous survey. A couple years ago, I asked, like, in a big empty box, I just said, has furry changed you? If so, how? And we basically took the most common responses from that and we turned it into like a questionnaire. So, to what extent has each of these things been true? Like, has furry changed you in this way? And so we have here the most common ways that people say they have changed as a result of furry. So I have here the 8 most common ways people say furry has changed them, from like the most common to the least common of these most common. So the most common way people say that furry has changed them is it's helped them to have new experiences. It's helped them to meet new people. It allows them to explore parts of themselves, have a better understanding of the sexuality of others, becoming more open to new experiences, more accepting of others, learning more about the LGBTQ community, and becoming more open-minded sexually. And then we also sort of did it on the flip side. Things that haven't changed or have not been true in terms of what furry has done to you. So these are things that people disagreed. They said furry did not do this to me. So my life has gotten worse. People strongly disagreed that has been the case since they became a furry. That was the single most disagreed upon item. So furry typically does not make people's lives worse. I have fewer friends. Furries disagreed with that. My mental health has worsened. Furries disagreed with that. My religious views have changed. Nope. I've become alienated from my family. Nope. I've become more anxious. Nope. I've become more confused about who I am. Nope. And I have changed my political views. That one a little bit less so, but still a no. So you can see some of the ways that furry does and does not change people. And a lot of the things you notice were changes for like I've become more open, I've become more social, I try new things. So, and I don't think that's surprising given the LGBTQ nature of the furry fandom. I think for those who maybe don't have if you're a queer kid and you don't have a lot of experience with other folks like you, stumbling into the furry fandom kind of gives you a sudden exposure to an entire community of folks like you.
Yeah, so that just shows furry, it makes everything better.
It's like adding like some salt or some pepper onto a steak. It just makes it better.
Some salt to the wound.
Add some flavor to your life. Become a furry.
And I should point out as well, because I'm seeing some of the comments, just because this is true on average for furs doesn't mean this has been true for everyone, right? So there's definitely a lot of wiggle room in there. Just because most furs say they've changed in this way, others will say, no, I haven't. So there's variability around this. I never want to say that any of these answers are blanket true for every single furry. This is just what's average or typical. But as we know, there's nothing average or typical about all furries. So. Okay, this one I wanted to bring up with the group because this one has been fascinating. I'm on this new kick now based on some of this data from this year. It's completely changed some of my thinking about the fandom, because I still in some ways think the fandom in some ways as like being the same place that it was 15, 20 years ago. And it's kind of neat to say that it has changed. So one of the things we asked, and I guess I'll ask the old timers in here, because we're all sort of old timers here, but
I'm just an old fur.
Right.
Oh, just so old.
But you probably remember that the story of becoming a furry is always the story of like, oh, I was the weird kid, I was bullied, I was awkward, and I didn't really have this crew to belong to, and then suddenly I stumbled into the fandom quite by accident. And then I found my peeps. Like, would you agree, even if that wasn't true for you, would you agree that that's what a lot of furs sort of used to say, that's how it went? right?
Yeah, 100%.
So
Yeah, but you got to figure how long ago, because you know,
Well, I'd say
technology
like
and social media has changed a lot of things.
yeah,
and that's what I was gonna say. So the story is very different today. So we've asked furries about like discovering the fandom. Was it really hard or was it really easy? Was it something that was unintentional? Was it something that that you sort of intended to do or you went looking for it? And what we found is it's almost the exact opposite today. Nowadays, overwhelmingly, furry said that no, it was very easy to find the fandom. They didn't really have to go looking very hard to just kind of discover it. And I think with sites like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and Twitter making furry much more visible and accessible than it was, say, 20 years ago or even 30 years ago, where if you didn't know someone or have an in, you had to kind of stumble into it. It's a very different place today. And I think this might be contributing to this influx of young furries and this rapid growth of the fandom is that nowadays the story is quite the opposite. It's no, I saw the fandom online and I'm like, yeah, that looks cool. I want to do that. So it's a very different route into the fandom than it was, say, 20 years ago.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's true. And because, yeah, like you said, there's just so much more out there, and it's easier to find. I feel like it's easier to find even if you're not trying to find it.
Yeah.
Or even in
That
Hot
makes sense.
Topic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you go into stores and there's like little things, and then people are like, "Oh, that's furry bait," and blah blah blah. But it's just like, it's definitely, yeah, the technology has changed, which has changed how people find the fandom.
Barnaby said that Lotso Bear got him into the fandom.
Let's see.
I don't know who that is.
What? You don't know who Lotso Bear is? That's
Nope.
okay. He smells like strawberries and he's a villain.
Okay.
He's a big
let's-
bear. He's from Toy Story. He's the pink bear.
Oh,
Okay.
I forgot that's his name. I've only seen that one once.
Let's see other stats. Okay, so this one was kind of cool, and this one is one of those things where I'm surprised we didn't ask about it before, but now that we have the data, it's one of those hindsight 2020 things. So we've often said that furry very rarely is a furry just interested in furry, right? There's a lot of overlaps with gamer culture, anime culture, science fiction culture, comic book culture. Like it overlaps with other nerd hobbies. And so we asked furries, hey, how many furry events have you been to? So conventions or local meetups and gatherings. And then also, how many non-furry events, gatherings, other fan-related but non-furry related have you been to? And what we find is that they're really, really close. The average furry has been to 5.81 conventions or furry-themed meetups. The average non-fur, or the, and then 5.81 furry-themed meetups and 5.06 non-furry. So very similar numbers in that regard, suggesting that a lot of furries do other stuff besides furry stuff. They go to other conventions, they go to other meetups, and perhaps belong to other clubs. You can be a furry and an anime fan. You can be a furry and a comic book fan.
Yep. Oh yeah, there's a whole ton of crossover. And as someone who was heavily in the anime fandom communities when I was younger, and the amount of people are like, "Oh, they're furries. They don't belong here," blah, 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 blah. And it's like, guys, it's all pretty much the same thing. Like,
When it comes down to it, I mean, it's just like with
relax.
bronies, right? Like the bronies, there was a point in time that they're like, bronies aren't, they're not part of the furry fandom, and it's like, shut up. Like, yeah.
The
Anyways,
overlap is too immense.
I mean, as a person who's both a brony and a furry, and who's sort of done research in both communities, I can say that I understand there are some bronies who are like, no, my interest is very specific to My Little Pony, and I have no interest in anything else furry. I don't condemn them for that. That's perfectly fine.
and that's valid. That's perfectly valid. It's just, I'm just more or less saying, like, I even like, it was to the point, Nuka, that people would go to equine panels just to make fun of them and call them bronies. Like at one point in time, like they would sing the My Little Pony song while they were coming out of their panel, like and
Yeah.
trolling them and stuff like that. Like I guess my point is that I don't know what my point is. I lost my train of thought. Keep going.
All right. This next section, I think, is going to get some conversation started. So this one's about fursuits, and this is on a topic that I think is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. So we're going to get into this here. The first thing to note is that fursuit ownership is on the rise. About 40% of furries said they either had a fursuit or were in a commission queue for a fursuit. With slightly more furries saying that they had a partial fursuit than saying they had a full fursuit. So partial ownership is slightly more prevalent than is full fursuit ownership, not by that much. Let's see here. Okay, here's
sounds so weird, Nuka. On a like partial like that it almost sounds like that they partially own it versus like fully owning
owning a partial suit.
Are they renting the other half out? Like, is somebody else using
leasing
that
a
other
suit
part?
like a car? Yeah. All right, so we're gonna do the guessing game again.
Yay!
In U.S. dollars, what is, because we asked the furries if you have a fursuit, how much did it cost at the time that you purchased it? In U.S. dollars, how much was it? So how much, cost-wise, is the average full fursuit?
I would say, on
6,000.
average, it is now up to 3,500.
All right, so 3,500. What was the other guess I heard?
6.
6. Okay. Any other guesses? All right. So the average cost of a full suit right now, based on the people in our survey, $3,147.
I went over. No, I lost on the Price is Right.
Yeah. Then the average cost of a partial is sitting at around $1,120 US. Keeping in mind that there's a lot of variability as to what constitutes a partial suit. So.
What was that again with the price for the
$1,120.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was the average price of a full partial suit.
Unless you buy your partial suit at a convention, then it's $3,500 for a partial.
That much for a head.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anywho,
we also asked about how long you've owned your suit for, and this one was really surprising to me. So most furries, the majority of furries, have owned their suit for less than 3 years. So there is a lot. So the number of fursuiters is going up, and a lot of those suits have been just in the last 3 years. And that's not even counting all of the fursuits that are currently in queues right now, about to hit the scene.
I think there's a lot of turnover. Because usually, in my experience, you get a fursuit, but then most furries change their character after a few years anyway. So they get a new suit.
All right. So another question. I love this one. This one was one of my favorites. I don't know why I was so interested in this. Commission queues. Because we finally started to ask, because one of the things that kept coming up, we would ask people, hey, how many fursuits do you have? They would always put in the comments like, none yet, but I've been in a commission queue waiting for one, so I'll have it soon, right? So we're like, we need to ask about commission queues. So my question to you, how long is the average wait time for a fursuit in a commission queue?
2
I
years,
would say,
which is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I would say I'm going to increase it a little bit, 2.5.
So we'll let the chat catch up here as well. But chat, what is the average wait time for a fursuit? I'm seeing 9 months. I heard. So who said 2 years here? Was that Rue who said 2 years?
No, that was
2.5.
Okay. So 2 years, 2.5 years.
If you want, you could bump me up to 3, so then that way I'm not.
Okay. So the answer we have is 14 months is the average queue time for a fursuit.
Okay.
And then I'll ask this question: what percent of furries have been waiting more than 3 years for their fursuits?
Mm.
That's a pretty good percentage. It's got to be at least. Well, no, because fursuit ownership is only 40%. So is that like what percentage of just those?
Of people who have of people who have gotten a fursuit, what percentage of them waited more than 3 years for their fursuit?
40%.
It's got to be pretty close, yeah, like 30-ish.
Firecrest says 80%. So the answer is 6%. 6% of furs say that they waited over 3 years for their fursuit.
Mm.
So, and then remarkably,
That's actually good. That's actually good. I want to applaud that. I mean, 6%. That's not bad at all.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but 14 months for the average is ridiculous.
So last question on this topic: what percentage of fursuits did people wait less than 3 months for? Which is a blisteringly fast time.
That would have to be low. I would have to say 5%.
I wonder if a lot of people get auction suits, though. That's probably around 20.
So it's actually 4.8%.
Wow.
Yeah, 4.8% of people have gotten their suits in less than 3 months. So,
which should be a lot higher. If so, I'm gonna go on a rant. I don't care.
Oh, here we go. Discord.
Soapbox time. Soapbox time.
If you decide that you're full time, 100%, I'm gonna make fursuits for a living, that should be what you do. It should be 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sewing fursuits. Not life got in the way, things happened, life gets in my way, and I gotta still go to work.
The views of other people on this do not reflect their scientists' opinions.
I think
if that's what you
should
decide to do for a job and you take money from people to do this job, you should do the job full time and just do it. Not, I'm going to work on it for an hour here and there and still charge $1,800 for a head.
All right, Click. I think that me and you need to go into business. And we'll hire a bunch of fursuit makers, and we'll put them in a warehouse,
like a sweatshop,
like Mr. Beast style, and put them in a sweatshop.
Oh God! I think I just threw up in my mouth a little.
Okay, rant done.
Are you sure you don't want to? You don't want to get
Somebody hide the soapbox. Take it. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's a very valid point, Click. I really do. I think that if it can be with any form of art. If you have some sort of if you're taking people's money, you do need to have some sort of a timeline that you give them. And I understand that not everybody is as organized. And I'm not a fursuit maker, so who am I to judge? Who am I to state these things? All I know though is that when it comes to a business, make sure that you actually have something that's written down that says this is your timeline, this is when you can expect it. And I understand that there's things that end up happening, but just be good at letting people know what's going on, communication, and letting people know. I mean, I had a friend just the other day that, he was super excited. He was going to get his suit. He was going to get everything. And because he did not reply to them in a certain time frame, it was off by a day. They basically said, we're ending the contract.
Oof.
And it's what? And he had been waiting years and years and years and trying to get updates and stuff like that. And because he missed one email by a day. Anyways, somebody take the soapbox. Oh my gosh, put it in there.
I'm taking it.
Take it.
All right.
Hide it.
Yeah.
So subject change.
We
Subject
can
change.
make a whole episode on this.
Yes.
Yeah, but jot it down for the episode ideas. All right. New topic here. Those of you who've been following First Science's research for like a decade, say it with me, nice and loud for those in the back. What's the most common Fursona species in the fandom?
Is it me?
No, it's got to be wolves. Still.
Is it me?
How
Is it
broad is it?
foxes?
Is it very species specific, or is it just like canine? Because that's definitely it.
Species specific.
I'd still say it's got to be between wolf and fox.
I'm a starter Pokemon.
So, for the last like 10 years, actually, MephistophEli kind of has it right there. So hybrid technically was always the highest category, but we're talking about specific individual species here. So for years and years and years, for basically a decade, it's always been wolf, wolf, wolf. No matter what sample we go to, no matter where we go, wolf, wolf, wolf. For the first time, I'm happy to report, wolves have been beaten by over a percentage point.
Huh?
Foxes.
Yay! Woo!
Yeah.
Cookies for everyone!
So
Woo!
for the first
Was
time,
this the stat? Was this the
Yep,
stat that
this
you were
is the
telling
stat.
me?
that Rue gets to parade around now. And
Woo! All right,
But then
all
that
right, go
just
ahead.
means he's basic.
Hmm, I'm
So-
not basic.
He's
He
a
I'm
was
basic.
basic
unique.
before it was cool.
He's a basic fox.
Mhm.
what's really interesting though is the species has changed considerably since a few years ago. So we've seen the speciescape, I guess you would call it, however you want to call it, change dramatically in the last few years. So other things that I never expected to see in this list is a lot of the big cats, so lions, tigers, snow leopards, way down, like down past 15th place. I think tigers in 20th place, and they're the highest big cat.
Wow.
You know what is in the top 10?
That is surprising because snow leopards were always the basic starter Pokemon for cats.
You know what is in
Yeah.
the top 10? Protogens.
What?
Yeah,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
the
I see it.
times they are a changing. Yeah, almost 10% of VR chat users are protogens, so it is growing fast. Other species that have been growing very quickly, deer in the top 10. Deer is in 7th place. Birds in general, growing quite a bit in popularity as well. Let's see here. What else is hyenas? 11th place. Hyenas are
Oh,
growing
yeah.
quickly. In part, I would say due to stores like Hyena Agenda, obviously, the sort of punk aesthetic associated with hyenas.
Yeah.
Also, apparently, hyenas have been associated slightly with the trans community and also with the black community as well.
Huh.
So there's a lot of folks who sort of see hyena as a mascot or an agenda or a persona for them. So yeah, hyenas growing quite a bit in popularity compared to, say, even just 5 or 6 years ago. Any other surprising ones on the species list here?
So they
Go ahead.
want to. So Barnaby in the chat wants to know, red pandas. Where are they on the list?
Red Panda is down a little bit from where they were before. They're in 32nd place, 1.8%. They used to be in the top 20, I believe. Now they're down a little bit. Horses
this
are
is-
way down.
So this is, number place of how many?
Yeah.
What's the ranking
Oh, so Red Panda's in 32nd place.
of is there 100 options
Oh,
Or is this just one people
about
filled out?
100 about 100 options plus other.
plus other? Okay.
Yeah. So we gave them a 90 some odd
30 seconds.
options,
Barnaby.
and then yeah. What else we have? Okay, so ones that were down quite a bit. When you think of quintessential, typical furry species, you think like horses and mice are on there as well. Typically, horses are down to 38th place, and mouse is down to
Interesting.
43rd.
We're dragons.
Down from
Yeah,
what?
I was gonna say dragons. Are dragons down?
Dragon 4th. So dragon's up there. Dragon, cat, dog, wolf, and fox are all in the top 5 there.
But when you say they're down, you got to say down from what?
I think down from third. So they went from third to fourth, but they're still up there.
Okay.
Possums are up too. Possums are in 17th place. There are more possums in this fandom right now than there are horses or mice.
Wow.
By a significant amount.
Wow, people really like to play dead.
I think,
Well, I think
it
the
goes
species
along
just
with
come
that.
to.
It goes along with the hyenas. They're a lot more of the punk aesthetic.
Yeah, punk aesthetic, punk culture. So yeah, but it's a really good testament when we ask people like, oh, why do you pick the persona that you do? It's often based on like what like, do you have a well-developed schema for it, right? 20 years ago, possums weren't super on the map, but there's more memes about possums in pulp culture. There's more sort of love for hyenas and possums and these other sort of species, so they get a lot of attention, and so they become more popular as characters.
Yeah.
So Nuka, Sage is asking, is there an option? I guess it would be under others, but has anyone ever put in for like shapeshifters or non-traditional?
Shapeshifter is 9th place.
There you go. See,
Shapeshifters
Sage,
are
there's
up.
more of you.
Shapeshifters are up.
That's a cheat answer.
No?
How is that a cheat answer? They just choose.
What species are you?
anything.
I don't know. Whatever I want to be today.
So, I love the
That's funny.
species data. The species data is always great. Let's see here. Oh, okay. So remember that I mentioned that we had that longitudinal data from Nordic FuzzCon that allowed us to track furries over time. So the big point, the big purpose of that was to look at things like, does going to a convention change a person? So compared to before the convention, when you're at the convention and then afterwards, does it change it? So one of the things we looked at was like, do you become more connected to the furry fandom, or do you feel like more of a furry after going to a convention? And we got some really cool data. So one of the things we found is that yes, compared to before the convention, after going to a convention, I guess I should make a distinction here. Use the terms fanship and fandom. Fanship is, do you consider yourself to be a fan? How big of a fan are you? Fandom is your connection to the fan community. So what we find is that after going to a furry convention, furries feel more like a furry. So that, after going in the weeks following, you're like, I'm a bigger furry than I was beforehand. So there's a huge spike at the convention. It drops down a little bit after the convention, but it still remains higher than it was before the convention. So going to a convention sort of makes you feel more like a furry. For some furries, it might be validating. It's like, oh, now I'm a real furry TM because I've been to a furry convention. We looked at, does it help you feel a greater sense of connection to the fandom after going to a convention? And this is where it gets interesting. It's a mixed bag. It depends on whether you already felt a strong connection to the fandom beforehand. If you were already strongly connected to the fandom beforehand and you went to a convention, then going to the convention boosts your connection to the fandom.
Rue just blinked out of existence.
Yeah, Rue just he voiped out. Bye, Rue.
Bye, Rue.
Should I wait for him or should we?
Nah,
Keep
just keep going.
going.
Oh,
Keep
keep going.
going.
I have to find some cookies. There's something around here somewhere.
All right. So what we found is if you're already connected to the fandom and you go to a furry convention, then yes, it boosts your connection to the fandom. But if you weren't very connected to the fandom and you go to a convention, it has no effect. And what we think is happening is something that I've long kind of suspected for a while. It's this idea that if you go to a convention by yourself, it can be kind of an alienating experience. Imagine going to Anthrocon, a convention of like almost 20,000 furs, but you don't know anyone. You look around and you see people everywhere, but like you don't know anyone, and it can be kind of hard to break into that. And so for some furs, they have this experience of going to a convention and sort of feeling that that distance from other furs, like maybe I don't belong here. Whereas if you already go knowing people, then you go there, you see the people you know, you're like, oh, this is great, and you feel more connected. So this sort of reinforces this piece of advice that I often give people: is if you're going to a furry convention, try to find out if there's people you know there, or maybe try to find a member of your local group who's going. But yeah, try to make connections before you go, because it might not be a great experience for you if you go completely alone without knowing anyone. And this would seem to bolster that idea. So
Yeah.
It does. It sucks. So like my first few conventions are actually a perfect example of this.
Mhm.
Because my very first convention, I went to all by myself, but I had a great time because I met a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
I made friends and it was fantastic. But then my next one was RMFC, which doesn't exist anymore. But it was basically everybody from here. We all went to Denver, so it was all hanging out with my friends at a convention, and I had a fantastic time.
It goes a lot better, yeah.
Right. And then I was, of course, my God, this is fantastic. This is wonderful. So I went to another convention by myself, and it was terrible. I was
Yeah.
around 3,000 people and was completely by myself.
And it
I've
almost
never
makes it
felt
that
so
much
alone.
worse. Yeah, it makes it that much worse when you see everyone else socializing and you're like, oh God, I feel so alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be sort of like going to the high school dance and everyone's there with a date and you're by yourself. Definitely not speaking from personal experience here.
So it can make a difference. And on that note, it also it's kind of how you take it, because like I said, my first one I went by myself, but it was brand new and oh my God, this is exciting and everything's wonderful, so I just made friends.
Mhm.
But then, like I said, I went to another one by myself and it was terrible. So
I see Firecrest asked a question: how many identify as younger characters? I know that a few years ago we had asked the question about subjective age. Do you feel younger than you actually are? And the average furry does feel younger than they actually are by a few years. We haven't specifically asked whether or not your fursona is younger than you. I'm going to jot that down. That's actually a really good question.
All of you are just a bunch of kid furs. I know it. I'm gonna sniff you out, and I'm gonna
Well,
find you.
even if not kid first, right? Like I'm pushing 40 right now. In my head, is Nuka 40 years old, or is Nuka like a 20-year-old young
Yeah.
scientist, right? So that's a really good question. I like that. So we will ask that. Not this year, or at least not this upcoming survey, because we've already got it through ethics as is. But maybe on the summer survey. I really like that question. So thank you for it. Okay. Another question we asked. This one was sort of interesting. We sometimes get asked, do furries go about the world interacting with people as their fursona, or like is your fursona exclusively for at conventions, and then when you're in the real world, you're you? So what we find is that in furry spaces, like when you're surrounded by other furries tend to interact about the same amounts with other people as their sonas and as their non-sona selves. So like if you're just meeting folks for the first time, then yeah, you're about equally likely, if you're meeting other furries for the first time, then you're about equally likely to use your fursona to introduce yourself as Knots. The more you get to know other furries around you, maybe you're a little more likely to interact as your non-sona self. But in day-to-day life, when you're meeting new people or co-workers or whatever, yeah, furries overwhelmingly say, no, I interact with other people in day-to-day life as my non-sona self. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Only with people they know super, super well is there even somewhat of a leaning towards using your sona. But even then, they still interact overwhelmingly as their non-sona selves. So this idea that I'm a fox, and when I go to work on Monday, I'm going to have all my coworkers call me a fox. That doesn't typically happen for the vast majority of furries. So just in case people were interested.
That is interesting.
I feel like that's pretty common, that it's like, if we're interacting with furries or our friends, then we know each other as our personas, but if we're not, we're you know,
Well,
we
I
don't.
think the main thing is we all have to have a livelihood. We all have to be able to make. We all have to make the cookies in the world to be able to eat. So, in order to do that, you have to kind of, step out of it in some way or form. Otherwise, unless of course you work for Disney, there's not very many places that you can just run around as your persona. I mean, even Disney, you can't run around as your persona. You have to run around as one of their characters. But, the point is like if you were to go to work and with your work badge, you also had your furry badge underneath that as well at the same exact time. And you're doing like a customer service type thing, or maybe you're working at a retail store and be like, "Hi, I'm here to help you. I'm Mr. Snugglefox. How are you? Good to meet you. Okay, let me check you out," or whatever you're doing or helping out. But yeah, anyways, I digress.
It's a good way to sort of counteract the narrative or the misconception that furries are people who lose touch with reality, and that doesn't seem to be the case
Yeah.
in most cases. Okay, continuing on with this, looking at furs at the convention, we actually did a really fine-grained analysis of what do furries do at conventions. And there's a lot of sort of things that we got out of this. So first of all, what are the most common activities at conventions? Some of the most common activities were hanging out with friends that I rarely get to see, but also hanging out with friends that I commonly get to see. Wandering aimlessly around convention space is a very common activity. Going through the dealer's den is one of the most common ones. Trying to meet new people, waiting in line, attending panels. So this is in descending order of most common. So waiting in line, attending panels, resting in my room, going to dances, drinking alcohol, exploring the city outside convention spaces, going to room parties, and then we're getting down into some activities that are a lot less common. Sharing my experience on social media, having sex with people I knew before the convention, creating artwork, performing at panels, volunteering, having sex with people I just met at the convention, drug use, and
Oh my.
working. These
Oh
are all
my,
very
really?
low. I should point out these are all very low on the list, right?
Okay.
So for
Wow.
comparison,
Hey, I just met you and you're Mr. Snugglefox. and I just met you, Mr. Big Tall Wolf. Ah.
For context, we asked on a 1 to 7 scale, how frequently did this happen? 1 being never, and 7 being like all the time. And sex with people I just met was 1.8. So we're very, very low on that list. So,
But it's
yeah.
on the list.
but it was on the list. I mean, all the items were on the list. So you found the most common things like hanging out with friends, wandering around con space, trying to meet new people, dealer's den. And so not only can we look at like frequency data, but we can also look at like, okay, when were these activities most common? When were people in their rooms the most often? When were people at panels the most often? Like we could actually do, because we broke it down into like 4-hour chunks throughout the entire convention. So we could actually chart what people were doing at various times. So if you want to see sort of a breakdown of what people do during a convention, we have on Saturday at 9 a.m. So Saturday kind of morning, the most common activities are dealer's den, creating arts, wandering around con space, trying to meet new people, and definitely not drinking. Drinking was the least common during Saturday morning at 9 a.m. to noon.
Amateurs.
Afternoon on Saturdays, most common activity, dealer's den, as well as being on social media and wandering con space. Very few people resting in their room during the afternoon. Saturday early evening, so 5 to 9, wandering con space, going to panels, hanging out with friends, going to dances, going to the dealer's den, and having sex with people I knew beforehand. That's apparently 5 to 9 on Saturday. That's when to do that.
Saturday
That's the
from
time.
5 to 9.
Well,
the sex
You gotta
is
get it
happening.
done before the dance starts.
That's true.
It's funny you say that because 9 to midnight's number one, going to dances. Going to dances, hanging out with friends. This is when the drinking happens typically. Also room parties. Between 9 and midnight, not a lot of sex happening. So it's 5 to 9, then the dances happen. Midnight to 5 in the morning. Still dances, room parties, trying to meet new people, drinking and drug use. And then finally, between 5 and 9, most people are asleep. But some gaming happens here. So the
Yeah.
gamers are still awake from 5 to 9 in the morning.
That's why the game rooms are 24 hours.
Yeah. So,
Well,
but it's kind of neat to see that time breakdown.
all I know is now I have to adjust my schedule. Like I need to start planning for some stuff.
You start
Yeah.
eating dinner later on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or dinner earlier.
Or early,
so
or
you
early,
can
yeah.
have,
Just
you
have a
can
big
have your
lunch.
sex,
Have a
Then you
late
go
lunch.
have
Yeah.
sex, and then go to the dance, and then go
Yeah.
to the game room.
and then
I've been
party,
doing
and then go to the
conventions
game
all
room.
wrong.
Amazing.
That's hilarious.
Let's see, what else do we have? Okay, and then so one of the things we did with this data, so again, continuing on, you've heard of post-con depression. In fact, First Science has some data on post-con depression and this idea of sort of feeling worse after a convention, right? So you go to a convention, you don't, after the convention, you're coming down from this high and you kind of feel worse. We were looking at, are there things you can do at a convention to reduce post-con depression? And as it turns out, yes. So what we found was that the best sort of preventative, like I wouldn't say preventative cure, but the best prevention for post-con depression is interacting with people at the convention. We found that those who spent most of their time at the convention socializing with other people, hanging out with friends, and the biggest one of all, going to dances. Those things specifically at the convention predicted doing better after the convention. And we think it's because you're making friendships, you're solidifying friendships, and you're keeping in touch. So when you go home after the con, you're still keeping in touch with those people, and it sort of makes the experience of coming back home a little bit easier because you're still in touch with those folks. But it was the people who spent a lot of time in their room alone, a lot of time drinking, or a lot of people not socializing at the convention. Those are the people who went home kind of in the worst shape after the convention.
Sure,
So
I can see that.
yeah, so I mean, you can actually say the literally the best predictor was going to dances. So if you want to tell one piece of advice, one thing to a new furry going to a dance, it's like, what can I do to stave off post-con depression? Go to dances, be around people, surround yourself with people, meet folks, get contact information, get social information. Just stay in touch after the con. That tends to predict doing well after the convention. So now you have an excuse to go to dances. It's good for your post-con depression.
Okay. Sex, dances, parties,
Also, hello, Virtual Furry Museum.
games, post-con depression.
Games.
Got it.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Shifting gears a little bit because I know we're starting to push toward 2 hours, so I'm almost done. I got just a few more pieces of data here. This one was really fun. Oh, I have a question. Has there been research into autism prevalence and underreporting in the fandom? Yes, we have a little. Part of the problem with data on autism in the fandom is because there's a lot of ways you could define it. So we could ask, hey, have you been formally diagnosed? One of the problems is that's probably an underestimation because there's a lot of barriers to diagnosing autism. Like if you don't have the money to go to a psychologist, or if you don't have access to a psychologist. We can also say, well, do you think that you have autism or that you're neurodivergent? And the problem is that a person could think they're neurodivergent, but maybe not be diagnosable, perhaps. So it's kind of tricky at a distance to get prevalence numbers. The prevalence numbers are, I have that somewhere. Give me 1 second. We actually have that data here, I believe. Where are you? Of course. Now that I need to find it, I can't.
That's always what happens every time, without fail.
Oh, I know I have this data. Damn it. If I don't find it in the next minute or so, I will defer that to later. But I know we have it.
So, how about that weather?
About them weathers.
It's cold and snowy.
Why can't I find this data?
Sports
You
ball
know-
teams.
Sports balls.
Aha,
team?
okay,
Sports
got it.
balls.
Got it.
Bert.
So we asked furries. So again, so take this with a grain of salt. This is not have you been diagnosed. We asked, do you consider yourself to be neurodivergent? 59% of furries said yes. 23% said no. 18% say I don't know. We asked, have you been formally diagnosed as autistic? 19.9% of furries said yes. 75.8% said no, and then 4.3% said I don't know. And then finally, do you think, like, have you self-diagnosed as autistic? 40% of furries said yes to that question. 33.6% said no, and 26% said I don't know. So you can see there's a big gulf between I've been formally diagnosed versus I think I might be. Depending on which
Yeah.
definition you use, it can be off by an order of 3. So this is why I'm kind of hesitant to say these are the rates in the fandom. It's pretty wide depending on whose definition you're going to use. So hopefully that
That's
answers
fair.
your question. Right. One of the things I wanted to talk about here was I love this data. Okay, so we asked about sorry. Feel a lot more information on the fandom needs to consider the demographics. Absolutely, I would agree that neurodivergence is something I think in general in society is something that needs to be considered, and there's a growing awareness of the prevalence of neurodivergence, and even the notion of the idea that there is such a thing as neurotypicality is starting to become a little more suspect. So, yeah, thank you for the question. Okay, so one of the things we asked about was attitudes towards technology, specific new technologies, because we keep getting asked, ask about attitudes towards AI, ask about attitudes towards ChatGPT and stuff. You're welcome. And so we asked about it. So we asked about a lot of different attitudes towards a lot of different technologies. And so we asked on a 0 to 100 scale. So 0 is I absolutely hate this. And 100 is I freaking love this. This is amazing, right? And 50 is like, I'm neutral. So technology that furries really, really like. Robotics, 82.5 average. So furries love robotics and think that shit is really, really cool, right? Half of this
It's
is probably
because they
furries.
want to put it in their fursuits.
I
That's
was gonna
why.
say, they want a tail. I want a digital tail and I want ears that respond to my brainwaves. That's what furries want.
This is why
I'll be honest, that would be
protogens
awesome.
were so high.
Yeah.
So going down the list, some other things that furries were a kind of more lukewarm towards, but still generally positive. AI in science, so using AI for things like medicine or object recognition, generally in the 60s, right? So in science it was about a 65. AI for object recognition technology was about a 60. After that we start to get to things that are super neutral, like and kind of slightly divisive. So using things like AI for recommendation systems, for like predicting what music you want to listen to next, that sort of thing. Furries were super mixed on that, an average of about 48. And now we're starting to get lower and lower approval. AI writing assistants, 44 was the average for that. AI chatbots, 37. AI drawing tools, 31. AI generated writing, 22. AI generated art, 17.
I'm honestly surprised it was even that high.
Cryptocurrency, 18. And my favorite one, how do you feel about NFTs? 5.
Everybody loves those NFTs.
I think furries just know better.
Yeah. Well, they're a little more understanding of like,
Well, how
They're
it
busy
actually
spending
works.
that money on fursuits, not on babies.
yeah, yeah. We're spending that money on fursuits and commissioning actual people.
Instead of cryptocurrency?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Hey, I love my AI art with my extra arm that's going through like my forehead.
Yeah.
It's
So-
so good.
And your dozen fingers.
Yeah. So if for the fandom's big debate over how does the fandom generally feel towards AI arts, yeah, pretty strongly negative. That's not to say that there's not people out there who like it and maybe they have various reasons for it, but as a whole, we can say the fandom is pretty generally negative towards AI art. So
Yeah.
let's see here, and I think that was the last really big. Okay, do I want to
I'm
talk
fine
about
with it as long as people are upfront and say this is AI art, and not trying to be like this is mine. This is something I created. But we could do a whole episode about that.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
And I'll probably wrap it up there, if only because there's like another one I really want to talk about, but the problem is I don't want to right now because my colleague, the sexologist, is currently writing a paper on this, and I don't want to I don't
We're
want to
gonna
spoil the
skip
headline.
on the naughty stuff. We're gonna skip on that.
So I'll
I'm
say-
innocent, by the way.
I'm only going to tell you what the topic is, and this might almost be worse. I'm going to tell you what the topic is, but I'm not going to tell you what
Any
the
of the
data
numbers.
are. Yeah. So the topic is nodding, and that's all I'll say.
Oh.
I think actually, didn't you? Wasn't
What
there a
is
survey
nodding?
that went out?
What does it mean?
Sorry, what were you saying, Sammy?
Wasn't there a survey?
Yeah, this is the data from that survey.
I did that one. Yay!
Yeah, we have the data, and all I'll say is that it's interesting enough that our sexologist is writing a paper about it right now.
Ooh,
Of course,
I'm excited.
once the paper drops, we'll share this data with the furry fandom. We don't believe in putting anything behind a paywall, but we also don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. It's hard to get a paper published in a journal if they say, well, the paper's already been talked about and stuff like that. There's no reason for us to publish it. So we're going to wait until it's published, and then we will make this data available for the fandom. But
we can talk about it all we want.
Yeah, but we do have data on nodding and the prevalence of people with nodding fantasies in the fandom and what motivates nodding fantasies. So we'll leave that one to the imagination. Yes.
Nuka, what is nodding?
Oh, you know what's funny? I had to explain that to an ethics board. We have all these questions about nodding, and our ethics board, who's a bunch of like older psychologists, so like, so what is nodding? I'm like, oh no.
Oh no.
Well,
Oh
it's like, 'cause
no.
you have to explain it to get it approved to be able to do the research and then potentially get it published. Like,
So yeah, nodding, KNOTTING, not
No,
nodding,
we're talking
NODDING.
about nodding, like it's in nodding off, going to sleep.
I will tell you.
How do you feel about nodding your head?
tying rope knots.
I really try not to do nodding while I'm driving. It makes me fall asleep and crash the car.
For those who genuinely don't know and are embarrassed to ask what I'll say, who are wondering, nodding refers to a particular shape in the base of some animal penises where there's a bulbous shape at the ends that is there. It has evolved so that during sex, during ejaculation, the penis the base swells up and keeps the penis inside the body for sperm retention purposes. That's what it is. And for some folks, they have a fantasy about this idea of stuckage or being sort of attached physically to your partner after sex. So that's part of the fantasy there. So enjoying sex toys or sheaths that have this particular shape. That's what it's referring to.
Is this what you
Are
told
you
the
okay,
ethics board?
Sammy?
This is what I explained to. This is what I explained to the ethics board.
It's a very
I am loving
scientific
every
explanation
second of this.
Well, I teach a psychology of sex
amazing.
class, so first of all, I can't be embarrassed.
Penis
Second of
eye.
all, second of all, I find that the trick, if you're to avoid embarrassment, just be super literal about what you're talking about, and it's kind of hard to giggle and snicker at it. You're just kind of describing what it is, right?
Yep.
Oh, we're talking about penises in my Christian podcast server.
Penis eye.
How dare you?
Uh,
Just kidding.
I loved every second of that because I know some people are just absolutely blushing right now.
Oh, Virtual Furry Museum. Sorry, in response to your earlier comment, if you want to talk to me about that, feel free to email me. If you go to the First Science website, you can find our contact information. Get in touch with us, and if you're doing a project on that, or if you're just interested in talking about that more, otherwise, just so we don't deflect into like a 20-minute conversation about that here, by all means, email, get in touch with us. We can talk about that, including one of the members of our team is a clinical psychologist who specializes in autism. And I know that she would be delighted to talk to you about that. So specifically the LGBT question you had earlier. So
Very cool.
There's also one more question that he ended up
there's
posting.
little research on the ABDL community. We need more info because we know this helps people. Yes, we do have a resident sexologist on the team as well. Part of the problem is ever since we got a sexologist on the team, like the dam has broken and he has like a bazillion questions, and we don't want the survey to just be 300 questions about sex. So we're sort of like every survey's okay. Wait, what's the next big question you have? We have to sort of ration it out on every survey. So first it was pup play. The last one was nodding. There's going to be a new one on the upcoming survey. So yeah, we're rationing out the sex questions, but that is definitely in the list of questions. The ABDL community, it's on there, and one of the questions we're eventually going to get to.
Yeah, and there's only so much, when you add new stuff, it can get to be too much.
Mm.
So, but perfect. Let's see, anything else? Any other fun data you want to give us, Nuka, before we
That's
pop
probably it
off
for
the
now.
day? Ooh, so I think Firecrest is asking if we got countries other than the US. I know you did
Right. So
Norway, but
Sweden.
Sweden.
Sweden, sorry.
So one of the problems is it's kind of hard to get a good estimate for how many furries there are in the world from our surveys, because one of the big biases is that we're largely English speaking, which means that we're going to be necessarily biased to pull for countries that are largely English speaking. For example, when we translated our survey into German the one year, lo and behold, we got a gigantic contingent of furs from Germany. The one year when a furry translated our survey into Mandarin for us, we suddenly got like 30% of our sample was from China. So it is kind of tricky. What we can say is in the most recent survey that we got, that was sort of an online survey, the bulk of our participants were from USA, followed by Canada, the UK, Germany, Russia, Poland, Italy, Netherlands, Australia, Mexico. And then there was a trickling of about 25 other countries beyond that. But again, we're kind of limited in this regard by our English-speaking members. I know that there's an effort this year to try to translate our survey into Polish. There's a group of Polish furries who wants to work with us, and one of our colleagues is actually looking to go to a Polish furry convention this year to possibly get data there. So each year we try to branch out a little bit more. But again, we're limited by the fact that there's 4 of us primarily on the team, and we all teach full time, and the research that we do for this is sort of a off on the side project. So we're just as happy to encourage other scholars around the world to also feel free to do research, and we're happy to help them out however we can. But I definitely agree. Learning more about furries from other countries, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's something folks need to remember with this is, while you guys are doing something really cool. I mean, I love seeing all the data and the information you guys put together. You're a small team, like you said, 4 people, and you're all doing it as well as, your full-time.
Yeah. And we're only coming from one perspective.
Yeah,
we're
and
just
everything
one
else.
perspective. Yeah, they're absolutely.
So it is, if people want to help, I'm sure you guys, if it's like if you want to translate and get it out to more people, that is something people can reach out to you guys to do that, because your reach is limited just in time and being able to do things.
I'm also encouraged by the fact that earlier this year, there was a furry scholars convention at Rotterdam, where they did this wonderful sort of day of furry research and furry scholars sort of converged on this convention in the Netherlands and gave a wonderful sort of series of talks. And it was nice to see like furries from all over the world there. So we're definitely not the only furry scholars, and I never want to give the impression that Fur Science are the only game in town. Definitely excited to see that as years go on, there are just more and more people doing this really cool research. So, yeah.
Well, it would be cool to be able to, bring it all together. I think would be interesting.
I'm just excited to read the work of people who aren't. I'm sick and tired of
aren't
reading
you.
my own writing. Yeah, I'm like, oh, it's nice to read academic literature from someone who's not me or from a different field than my own. So I'm delighted by it. I'm like, yes.
It gets the nerds going. Well,
yes,
awesome.
definitely get in touch with us. Virtual Furry Museum. You can email us. You can go to firstscience.com. Check out our contact information there. I'd love to chat with you about it for sure.
Cool.
All right. I guess we're wrapping up the stream then. Or no, do we have housekeeping to do?
Oh, housekeeping, eh? Well, as you guys know, we have a lovely website. Our website is forwhatitsworth.com. Please go over to forwhatitsworth.com and look at what we have to offer there. We also have this lovely YouTube channel that you're watching this from. Sammy's been amazing at posting on the YouTube channel as well. Our advertisement is not unfortunately, we don't have very much of an advertising budget. So our advertising is always word of mouth most of the time. So if you love our show or if it's helped you in some way or form, please help promote the show itself. Tell your friends. Another thing is we love hearing your feedback. So if there's some things that you pulled from this particular episode and you want to share your feedback on the episode itself, please feel free to send us an email directly and we'll read it on the next episode. Our email is cast@forwhatitsworth.com. We also have a Telegram channel. If you want to be a part of that, you'll need to message me directly on Telegram, and my Telegram is @WineRedFox. We also have a SpeakPipe. I believe that's SpeakPipe. Can't remember the actual URL. SpeakPipe/FWIW.
Yeah.
Yep. Speakpipe.com/FWIW.
Nice. Let's see. And what is the next episode, you guys?
Crap, I should have looked that up beforehand. wait, I can pull it up right now. I definitely know that the next episode is Furries Becoming Mainstream. It's another live stream episode.
Awesome.
Furries becoming mainstream.
So please send us emails about that or audio clips. We love audio clips. I mean, I know that our voices sound absolutely amazing, but we love to hear from you specifically. So please send us audio clips so that we can include it in the show itself.
It's basically an extension of the discussion we had today about furries. As the fandom gets bigger, will it ever go mainstream? Is this a good thing? That's the discussion we'll be having.
We also have our amazing patrons. And you know what? Charlie isn't here today to remind us to do this patron read.
I was going to say, did you think you were going to get away with it?
No.
Do you think you were going to have so much data that you wouldn't get to hear the music?
Why did I do this to myself? I don't want to hear the patron music.
Well,
you don't want to thank our patrons?
I do, but I love our patrons, but this is torture.
Well,
let's go, baby.
Do it, Rue. Do it, Rue. Read the patrons, Rue.
No, I don't have to
read them.
You guys will have to do it.
All right, I guess I'll do it. So, thank you, patrons. Thank you, Barnaby and Nuka.
I love that music.
No.
And Basel, Black Baldrik, Ichigo Ookami, Lufis, MephistophEli, Plug, Tenax, Chaphogriff, Lygris.
Why are you torturing me?
Excuse me. Ausi Kat, Christian, Citrus Fox, Icy Solid, Sage Lightfang, Tier, and Victor Mutt.
God, I only wish we could hear the list again.
Please, no, don't do it again. Don't do it again,
Want me
please.
to read it again? I'll read it again.
No, don't
All
do
right.
that. Why
Louder
would you
this time.
suggest that? No.
With more passion. Nah, I'll be nice.
No,
I'll just.
If you're
read it
gonna
wrong.
if you're gonna do it again, just read it really, really, really quick, like
Oh
fast.
no! If I did it again, I'd do it even slower.
Oh no!
No, you're gonna have to do it in some sing-song style. So rap us the names.
No.
You're no fun.
Well, hey, speaking of our lovely patrons, we have a patron game night tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
So I think that one thing that that I don't think that we ever really say on the show, because look, we're not all about money type thing. I mean, it's what's nice is the show itself, what we get from patrons, it keeps our lights on, if that makes sense. That's basically what it helps out with. But to be a patron and join our Discord and join our patron game nights, it's $1 a month. I know I'm gonna sound like an infomercial. I'm so sorry. I don't want to sell my soul this way, but it's only like $1 a month, and then we have fun every month. So be my paid friend.
Be my paid friend. Oh boy! At
I'm
least you
joking.
say
I'm
it as
joking.
it is.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But we have lots of fun. And we're gonna be doing that tomorrow. What time?
2 p.m. Mountain Standard.
So the same exact time as it started today. So we'll see you guys there.
But
Is there
I think-
anything else that I forgot?
I don't think so. I think that's got all of it.
Okay.
There was a question.
right.
Rue is in VR. The rest of us are not.
Oh. There's a question? Yes.
Whether we are in.
I am in VR. So, anywho, this has been Rue.
Sammy.
And click.
And I guess Voss, if you want.
Ooh, data.
And this has been For What It's Worth.
For what it's worth.
worth.
Regression analysis.
Penis eye.